listening to the Film Situation podcast.
I'm so happy to have Kiira Benz on the Film Situation podcast. Welcome, Kiira.
Thank you, Zeph. Good to be here.
I've known Kiira for a very long time, sort of through the film scene in New York City, throwback to the Stranger Than Fiction documentary night at the IFC Center. I think that's where we first knew each other from.
Those are some great times. I have a lot of really wonderful memories. It was a really special screening series.
Yeah, it was. It was cool because the IFC Center always reminded me, I always describe that place as, it feels like an ongoing film festival, kind of. Like you
it did. You were like learning all the time. They were bringing in these great filmmakers, and my favorite part was the Q&A.
I love the Q&A. Yeah, that was the best. And I like the after parties too.
I know. I mean, I remember having some incredible conversations with people. I met Paul Giamatti after one of them.
I was there, I think.
Were you there that night? That was a really...
It was for American Splendor, right?
That's right. Yep.
Yeah,
and it was
there.
Freezing cold night. It was like we all sat in a tiny group from the freezing cold and had some really wonderful conversations.
Was he nice to you?
He was great. I was more afraid of Ted Hope than I was of Paul Giamatti. I ended up between, or maybe Ted was at the table. I either ended up between both of them. I know Paul Giamatti was on my left. I remember that very specifically.
I know I met Steven Soderbergh at one of those events. That was really cool. Yeah, it was great. It was great. That's what I miss about New York, actually, is stuff like that, you know?
Yes. I mean, I think that was a really special time, and that was a special series, and the way that Tom Powers approached it and brought people in and was able to get them to attend Q&As and bring core people from their team. I mean, I just met so many interesting people. I met a high altitude cinematographer, and I remember having the most incredible conversations with her, learning about how she would change her camera cards when she was filming.
Wow.
In high altitude situations.
That's wild. So Tom Powers was your teacher, right?
He was, yes.
Yeah.
I have had a handful of film courses in my life, and happened to take one post undergrad, and after my postgrad, which was actually in theater, in classical acting and classical drama in London, and thought I had fallen into filmmaking, fallen into documentaries, and thought I should probably learn a little bit more. And I enrolled in this continuing education class at NYU, and Tom was the professor. And it was, I think, the last time he ever taught. And I just got really lucky and learned quite a bit about, the film festival circuit, how to, sort of target what kinds of things you need to get your film landed in different places. And it was really an incredible education.
Talk a little bit about yourself. Give us an audience that's not familiar with you, maybe a little brief introduction.
Sure. Yes, absolutely. So my name is Kiira Benz, as you said. I run a studio called Double I Studios. We make immersive, interactive productions. We have done a lot of work in virtual reality and augmented reality, but we're kind of known for mixing virtual reality and live performance, or VR in theater. And that's come a bunch of different ways. We've done some productions at the Venice Film Festival in what I call a hybrid format, where we are presenting to a live physical audience in Venice, and we've built a theater there. And then simultaneously, we're performing in virtual reality to a virtual audience. And then we're doing almost like a television broadcast technique, where we're using virtual production and virtual cameras and streaming those out to the physical audience, and doing camera changes in the room, camera cuts live for the live audience. So it's been a mix of filmmaking knowledge that I've appropriated over the years, learned over the years, and then mixing it with new technologies, from VR to MR to AR and other types of emerging tech.
Amazing. And your recent film, Finding Pandora X, that played at the Venice Film Festival.
That's right. Yes, that was a fully virtual production. We built 3 virtual worlds, and the audience goes almost like a mix of an escape room and a live performance, and also a mix of gaming technology. And so the audience essentially is playing together, but they're also attending a show with Broadway performers. And we brought everyone into VR together. That was during the pandemic. And then we continued to perform that production over the course of a year after we premiered.
Amazing. And congratulations about that, by the way. That's a big deal, honestly.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, it was, I think, kind of cutting edge for a lot of different people, because for many people, it was their first time in VR. People were actually buying headsets to come see our production. So we were definitely drawing in a theater community, a theater crowd. We ran a party with IndieWire that year, and we brought a bunch of the filmmaker world, film industry in as well. And it was some of their first time in VR. And so we call it onboarding. We were bringing a lot of people into these worlds, into virtual reality, but also then into these, magical lands, essentially, where they're coming to a virtual Mount Olympus and learning what it feels like to navigate that as a person in the body of an avatar, and what is possible in these virtual worlds.
And I guess, how would you describe it to somebody that was experiencing it there?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that for the people that were experiencing it, they embody the role of a Greek chorus member. So in my productions, I like to really think a lot about the audience. I think about this, even if I'm making a two-dimensional film, thinking about, what are the opportunities of what that audience should look like and feel like, and how can we bring them along through the story? In this case, because it's VR, we have an opportunity to make it interactive. And so they can embody a character, they embody this Greek chorus, and they're looking for hope. They're looking for this box of hope. And they do that by going on these different adventures. It's a branching narrative structure. So half the audience follows Zeus into the underworld, and half of them follow Hera into the Futura city. And then they solve different types of puzzles and games. And we built the show in a way that many people from different countries that speak different languages, English might not be their first language, we tried to build in these kinds of puzzles and interactive moments where they didn't need to know English or speak any language. They would just understand through gesture and play and game how to work with each other and do this in a collaborative way. So it's what we call participatory storytelling and collaborative gameplay.
That's pretty cool. And how many people were sort of a part of the crew to pull this off?
Yeah, we run a pretty big crew. It's been a minute since I've run this production. I know when we did Loveseat in Venice, we were 10 total, but that also included 3 actors. So I guess technically 7 crew. We were about the same on Finding Pandora. The cast is bigger. It's 5. In fact, Jen Harris, who was in our original cast of Finding Pandora and Loveseat, will soon be on Broadway in El Mary. So Nice. It's been really fun to see these actors that have been willing to come join us and learn different skills, learn how to embody avatars, learn how to fly in virtual worlds. It's been really neat to train them, bring them in, have them bring their curiosity and level of play into what we're bringing, and see where their careers have gone since as well.
So Loveseat, was that the first time you were in Venice?
Loveseat was my first production in Venice. Yes, okay. That's right. In 2019.
Was that the first time you were in Italy, or you had been there before?
I had been to Italy before, but I'd never run a production in Venice. Yeah. And it's a production with a lot of technology.
What was that like?
It was an adventure. We partnered with HP, and HP had shipped in. We needed about 10 computers to run the production, like large scale desktop computers. And so a lot of equipment. And so it got flown in and then was transported over to the island, because everything is islands in Venice.
Yeah.
So it had arrived on this giant pallet, and I'll never forget my first time encountering all the equipment backstage that hadn't been unboxed yet. And it was like a tower. I probably have a photo of it, but I don't know if I have the photo of myself encountering it, where it was like me versus giant tower of equipment that needed to be installed. And so we built a theater there, and because basically Venice, and they're so incredible at doing this. Biennale is amazing. It's an amazing institution. They're running all these different types of biennales. They have the art and architecture one, and then they have the teatro, and they have danza. So they're doing art, architecture, archives, theater, dance, and the film festival, which is, the very glamorous one that a lot of people are familiar with, and the big red carpet. It was my first time walking a red carpet, and it was just, everything just sort of done up in this incredible way, but they're constantly building and installing. So for us to build and install, I think that they were very used to it. But for me, it was a first time just like carting equipment and getting it over from Vaporetto, little tiny ferry to another little tiny ferry, and just like moving all the equipment and chairs that we needed for the audience and everything that it took to, build up in this incredible way to be able to run over a dozen performances.
When you tell your life story, you should depict this like you in a gondola with all these HP boxes going there.
Pretty much. My set designer actually, like, we still to this day have a really incredible image of like the final chairs floating on a ferry after we dismantled everything. Yeah. And we had these signs because our show was built as like almost like mocking a game show. It had like a game show setup, but it was a rom-com, but like a scripted reality show, and people were competing for the love of a chair, competing for the love of a partner, which was done in the form of a chair. So very avant-garde comedy. Well, we had these signs that would play during the show that said applausi. And so as we dismantled the production, we had like one final sign that we didn't take back to New York and California with us. And it's like floating away on a Vaporetto. It's like applausi. It felt like this very, it felt very metaphorical to the moment in time.
That's pretty cool. And how would you kind of describe, was Finding Pandora X like a bigger scope of a production?
They were both big scopes in different ways. I mean, Finding Pandora, we again partnered with HP. And in this case, because it was a pandemic, we did not build a physical theater. No one could go to Venice. Well, Europeans could go physically. Most of our cast and crew were based in the US, but we were spread across the country. And so HP helped us ship equipment. I actually have like an old headset behind me. This is like
cool.
One high HP headset. Nice. So they helped me ship equipment around the country. And I had never trained actors before to learn how to perform in VR. I hadn't trained them. I trained them physically, but I had never trained them virtually before. And so I was like, will everything work the same? Like, I can't spot them. I can't make them comfortable. I can't like sit down with them and make sure that they're not dizzy. Because when you're in VR in a headset for an hour at a time easily, it can be really disorienting. It can take you out of your body instead of connecting you to it. So we have these things, different forms of our senses. I learned so much more about our senses as I've started to go into XR storytelling, where, we have a sense called proprioception, and that's really how we connect to our body. And it gives us a sense of our balance. It's really important. And so when we're working spatially with spatial technologies, we really want to think about what is someone doing with their body? And if we want them to feel comfortable and not a sense of fear and like know where their body is, then those performers and even our audience members, they need to have an understanding of what that is. And so you can give them things that help them actually connect to their physical body and their virtual body and virtual space, but it helps them have a sense of where their physical body is so that they believe that their physical body and the virtual body are the same.
That makes perfect sense. You just reminded me of like the first time I used a Nintendo Wii. I was with like a group of friends like back in the day and playing like the bowling game. And I think I knocked something, a friend of mine actually knocked something off of the table. And then it's like took us all out of like, oh man, yeah, we're in like a living room, not in a bowling alley. Right. Exactly. Right. Like you forget because it's transporting you out of physical reality, taking you somewhere else. Yeah, exactly. So I guess let's go back to the beginning for a bit. Like, how did you first get into this?
Tribeca Film Festival. I think for a lot of filmmakers, and I know that you've got this great audience of people listening and tuning in right now, I think we discover a lot of new things at film festivals. We have an opportunity to discover new types of films and filmmakers. We have an opportunity to go to different types of events and panels, but also these technologies and these programs that are coming in, they can open us to, new ways of looking at and experiencing storytelling. So I had the opportunity to finally put a headset on at Tribeca. It had been at Tribeca for years before I put the headset on, maybe 4 years. They've been programming VR, but I had never, they only had so many people on a list that could get in. And I'm a quiet person. And so I'm like rarely going to be at the front of the list, and I'm not going to like shout and jump around to like grab a headset from someone. I'll wait my turn. So the year that I finally saw it, I was one of the last people to get in. And I remember actually I had given my spot even to someone else that was like, couldn't come back another day, and was like, it's okay, I'll come back another day. I'll wait again. And I did. And the filmmakers were so kind. I think they'd seen me sitting around for so long, so many days. They were just so nice. When I took the headset off, I was so, mesmerized. It felt like a real life-changing moment. I did this incredible experience called The Enemy, where the creators had done photogrammetry, which is, do you know what that is, Zeph?
No, not at all. Yeah, please.
Photogrammetry. Okay, so for you and your audience, photogrammetry is taking cameras and you're basically taking lots of still images, lots of pictures all the way around a person and stitching that together so it makes a 3D model of that person. Similar to volumetric capture, where we're filming, we're using a lot of video cameras to capture a person. We not only get their three-dimensional body and form, but we also get their movement when we film. This was photogrammetry, so it was just still images. And there are some incredible apps you can actually use. You can like photogram 3D objects in your real life and scan them and make 3D objects like today. And a lot of these apps are very reasonable price points. Some of them sometimes offer free programs for a trial period. So there's some incredible tools like right on our phones today to start using. But basically, these filmmakers had used photogrammetry to capture an Israeli soldier and a Palestinian soldier, and you had to hear them out equally. They were asked the same set of questions, and you physically had to walk between each soldier and get close enough to them in order to trigger their story. So
that's fascinating.
Your body, right? It's so cool. And I like everything about it. I was like, this is the storytelling I've been waiting for. And like, this is the technology. What do I need to know? And I sat down with the creators and I wrote like down every piece of tech that they had used and just jumped into learning. And then about a month later, I entered my first contest with Samsung and I won.
Wow. That's pretty cool. Now, what was the contest? What was that all about?
That was 360 video. It was a 1-minute piece, which even then was pretty hard to make because a lot of the software that we have today did not exist then. So we were bouncing between using still image software, like stitching cameras together with still images, and then translating it back into the video, and then going back to the still image stitch and taking it back to video. So it was like a painful process even to make a minute of content. The challenge was to take people into another world, something really interesting. I took people into an animator studio in Brooklyn that worked with cardboard and stop motion animation, and we did a combination of those things in the piece.
Nice. Now, were you tech savvy growing up?
Not at all. No, I was like the furthest from it. I was one of the last people to get a computer in my grade. I think I grew up almost with a fear of technology, but it's always been a challenge. Like I have to overcome it. Like in order to make the stories that I want to make, I just have to know it. I have to learn it. So now now I'm eager to learn all the time because I have learned what's possible and I've become less fearful. But I think, growing up, the last thing I thought I would become would be a director, let alone a director working with emerging technology.
I love that. And I'm all about, this is something I talk about a lot in general in the past few years, is just like putting yourself outside of your comfort zone. I think that's so important as an artist, as a creator, for anybody really to accomplish anything, because I think the older we get, the more there's a gravitational pull to remain in our comfort zones. It's like versus being a kid, like when you're forced to be out of your comfort zone all the time, like you're in a new grade, new class, like new this, like new experiences all the time. And, but like as you get into the groove of adulthood, people just tend to stay more in their comfort zone much of the time. So I love hearing kind of stories like this where you just like pushed yourself to learn these things, even if you didn't have that technical background in them.
Thank you. I think you're really right. People need to step outside their comfort zone. I think we're going to see a lot of that right now with AI. Like if we don't step outside our comfort zone and learn all of these new tools, they will leave us behind. Yes. So I think stepping outside of comfort zone is really key. And we grow, we grow as people. We grow into something bigger than we could have imagined.
For sure. I feel like I've been doing that by just doing a lot more home repairs and having to become more handy with certain things.
But you know what? In relation to filmmaking, it's like problem solving.
Yes,
right?
Totally. Filmmaking is problem solving.
Yeah, right. Like it's like the same thing. It's like now maybe it's the story of your house, right? Like this is the home that you're living in. So that could be a story too. And it's like, what does it take to keep the story functioning, to make the story come to life?
Yeah. I mean, with like home repairs and things like that, it's like if you hire people to do it all the time, you're just, it's going to become egregiously expensive.
So definitely.
When you're conceptualizing a project, are you more interested in the narrative of it or the experience of the audience?
I'm interested in both. I think first and foremost, I think a lot about my audience and what their journey will be like and what kind of core feeling I want them to have, because it's experiential. So, there's a production that I did called Runnin with Reggie Watts and Intel Studios, and the core feeling of that was joy. And that came from, a goal of what I was hoping it would be, but also very much the music of what Reggie had written on that album. And when I listened to that album, and especially to this track that was my favorite track and the one that he definitely wanted to highlight and move forward with, that track is a piece of joy. It's just like, you just want to dance to it. You feel like a young person. You just want to move your body. You feel like it's very colorful and bright. And so the goal was that people would put a headset on and feel joy by the time that they took the headset off. And I do think that we achieve that in that piece, and that really embodies what that track is. So yeah, I think it's about the feeling, but there's also always story. Like I'm always making sure that there's a narrative and a narrative arc, even if it's something where we're taking people on an adventure through different virtual worlds, those still have a narrative to them. And that user journey is really important.
Like, how does it work in terms of, is there a portion of it? Is it kind of like a sort of like a video game where there's like a portion of it that there's just like story and people are witnessing a portion of the story, then they're participating?
It's not broken up so much, it's more like the story is happening and they're moving through the story. So in Finding Pandora, the structure of that is in the structure of a quest. It's not a hero's journey, it's a quest. And so the audience is on the quest looking for things, but they are encountering in moments scenes where acting is happening in front of them. They could still be interacting and doing something, but there's less interaction in those scenes. So we're kind of taking that user journey and, finding moments where there's higher interaction points where they're meant to solve something in order for the story to move forward and in order for certain action and events to happen. So for example, the audience that follows Zeus into the underworld, they battle a Cyclops, but they have to do a number of things first in order to get to the scene where the Cyclops happens. And so they have to like break a wall together. They have to solve a puzzle. And then they have to find like how to get small and climb through a tunnel together. And then when they enter in this big cavern, that's when they realize there's another puzzle to solve, but it's behind the Cyclops. And they have to help Zeus fight the Cyclops in order to complete the final puzzle to go back to Mount Olympus.
And what's typically like the whole running time of the situation?
That show is an hour long.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And that scene varies on how the audience is moving through it. So there's the journey this is where the branch happens. There's a journey that the audience goes on with Zeus, and then a journey that the audience goes on with Hera. And those branches take anywhere from 10 to 12 minutes. Just depends on how fast the audience moves through them. So our stage manager is like jumping between worlds and like cross-checking to see that the audience is time out as closely as they can to return back to Mount Olympus, so that the rest of the scenes at that point, they come back at scene 4 and then scene 5, where they go to the Oracle, these like final dramatic scenes can take place.
Now, do you have like some sort of like inside people that if like the audience can't solve the let's say the breaking of the wall
puzzle.
or something, the puzzle, that like you're like, okay, here, let's do
Here's
this.
the puzzle piece, right? We have like ushers and people that help, that are there to like catch the audience if they go the wrong way. So I think of them in like immersive theater, like you might have an usher or
like a Sherpa.
Like by a door to like make sure like you're lost, like that's actually an exit. So like if you need to exit, this is for safety reasons, you can go this way. Or like you're lost, you're just going the wrong way, or you're trying to maybe go the wrong way. Like we definitely have people, we have different levels of experience of people that come through. There's people that have never worn a VR headset before. And so for them, it could be really a challenge to get through some of this, like navigating how to use all these different tools, how to move their bodies, how to keep up with the rest of the audience. We've got people that are avid gamers that, are very fast. Usually things balance out where you have someone who's very experienced and someone who's less experienced, and they end up helping each other. What's kind of been beautiful watching all these audiences interact. And again, I think if I take it back to like the film world, is that we see, I know that when we're watching a film, it's not necessarily interactive, but if someone needed help finding a seat, for example, or something, like there would be someone that would try to help show the way, even if they can't use language, or like move over for someone to make space into a row. It's like that. Like we see a lot of that. Okay. Where someone, like knows that this is the puzzle piece and someone doesn't know how to get it into the puzzle, someone more experienced will help that person.
As far as the audience, how many participants are there
usually? We are, I feel like the sweet spot, the kind of happy number is about 16, but we've definitely done over 20 in a world before. But this is going back years ago. Like now a world can hold more people in it. So as the technology has grown over a time, usually when a platform is growing at a certain point, it's capable of holding a certain number of people in it. We call it an instance. And so basically that instance can only hold so many people that have all of this tracking information. If anyone that listens to this is familiar with motion capture, it's like tracking all your body points. So you're wearing a headset and parts of your body are being tracked and all that data is feeding back. And it's trying to, like, the world is trying to hold all that information so that we all read each other and see, like, Zeph is bending down to pick up a puzzle piece and someone else is like jumping in the air. And so we want to make sure that, the world is reading all that data back to each of us so we can see it in real time.
Interesting. Do you think that other emerging technologies like quantum computing or anything like that are going to just enhance these sort of technologies and experiences?
For sure. Absolutely. Yes. I mean, I think I like to look at things like AI and the Internet of Things and XR as this kind of ecosystem, and all these things are feeding to each other. I think it's going to build in a speed and just become, far, far more efficient for us to be moving between these worlds. These technologies and devices will talk to each other more frequently. And I think we need to be aware of what role we play within that. Like, what of our data is getting sent back that's being recorded without our knowledge? What kind of exchange of information is happening between these technologies? And, what role are we within that? Whether we are actively giving up our rights or we just don't even know what's happening.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. When you're developing these sort of projects, what's kind of the approach as far as what's the process like when you're building immersive worlds from scratch? Or where do you even begin?
For me, it starts with a core feeling. That's definitely a big piece. It usually starts with a bit of story, and sometimes I have almost like a primal image of something. And even back to my days when I was making films, and in some ways that's coming back to my life. It's, filmmaking has never left me. It's just changed in its form. And, the tools that I learned from making films originally a decade ago, those things are just a part of what we do now in a virtual world, where we're equipping our actors and our camera team with, virtual cameras to learn how to shoot inside the virtual world. So a lot of those things, I would say it can come from a sense of story, like a story that we really want to tell, a world that we want to build. And for me, there's usually some kind of prime image and prime feeling that I have that I really want to make sure the audience experiences.
Nice. And what's it like working with actors in this sort of situation?
It's been really fun. I think they've been really daring to learn how to put all this technology on and wear it and be willing to, if we are putting them in a hybrid format like we did in Venice in front of a physical audience, they have to be really unembarrassed of what their physical body looks like when they're wearing all of this technology, because they can control these things to some degree, but they can't outwardly, have a sense of what they look like exactly. And so I think just like a performer putting themselves on camera too, it's like what happens when the role takes over your body, takes over who you are. Hopefully you are merging or disappearing into that character. And I think that happens a lot with these avatars. It's been really fun teaching actors how to help them learn what their avatar body is, like how they can connect their physical body to their avatar body and what those things are. Sometimes that the model of the avatar, where like the top of their head is, in the virtual world might actually be higher than their physical head or lower than their physical head. And so when they go to make a gesture, they might have to like find what that is so that it's convincing for the audience, even though it doesn't really look like that, or it doesn't feel like that to their physical body, but it looks different in the virtual world.
Oh, that's really interesting. What do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions people have about VR storytelling?
That's a great one. I think that for those of us that love films and love going to movie theaters and love going to theaters, there's something about sitting in the dark with each other, wanting to experience something on a giant screen that, we just could never do in our own home. And I think that the idea of virtual reality that a lot of people have is like, oh, you go play a game by yourself in your living room, and that it's taking you away from that communal experience. And I totally disagree. I actually think that it can extend our communal experience and open us up to be able to connect with a lot of other cultures and people in different time zones and places. So there is, I think a real opportunity for what virtual reality can do, and that it's not a solo isolated experience. It can be. And I guess technically we could go to a movie theater and potentially sit alone in a movie theater, maybe if we pick a certain screening. But, I seek out going to see movies to have that shared human experience, that shared reality. And I do feel that virtual reality can do that for people, but that isn't always the picture that gets painted in media.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Because, but I'm getting the sense of it that's even more sort of elevated from speaking with you about it, that, like these people it's even more of an interactive sort of audience experience. So it sounds really interesting, actually. I would love to experience it sometime.
We got to get you in a headset, right? Definitely. If we could just like send one through a portal to you now.
Well, I guess that's what I'm thinking about next. Like, what's the sort of like, aside from showing, like running these productions at film festivals, is there another avenue for it that's more scalable, I guess?
The distribution, I think, is really a challenge. It's been a challenge for this immersive XR industry. I think that we see a certain number of pieces that go to institutions like museums. A handful of them are starting to find their ways into performing arts institutions. So, for example, the most recent piece that I just premiered about 2 weeks ago, that piece was at a dance festival called Jacob's Pillow. And there, they have a really incredible new center for dance called the Doris Duke Theater. That's really about the future of dance and looking at these future forms of performance. And I think that between the programmers that were there and also other institutions that were coming to experience the pieces, they're looking at what an audience going through these experiences is, what that looks like, what that means for the institution, how it functions, and how it sits within these frameworks. And I think that we're finding a lot of people are really open to trying these pieces. Like they have not all had a VR headset on, or they haven't seen VR art. And so there's an opportunity to bring a lot of new audience members in. And I also think that these institutions, it seems like they're looking for newness, like they're looking for the future. And I don't know if that's a sign that the institutions, that things have been done a certain way where, something isn't new. I assume that they're always looking for things that are new, but right now it feels like it's really timely that there is an opening to this. So I feel like the distribution is into these institutions, between museums, performing arts centers, galleries, and then you see places, these kind of interesting pop-up spaces. You see places at like Rockefeller Center. You see, different places that are opening to invite in interactive experiences. Those could be an installation that's built around lighting or something where people are, doing almost like a maker space. So I think we're seeing a lot of shifts in the ways that audiences experience things. And I think that it must be similar in some ways for filmmakers to even figure out, what is the model if we can't get a film, for example, into a movie theater? What are the other forms of distribution? And we're seeing, for example, the digital platforms expand.
Yeah. Do you think do you think there'll be a time where there'll just be places just like the way people go to like an escape room to just experience something like this?
Definitely. Yes. There's been that model. A lot of those places I think have tried something. They haven't all lasted. So I think they're still trying to find their model of what that looks like. I think for some of those, VR arcades, XR arcades that have popped up over the years, there's this other umbrella that we call sometimes the LBE model, location-based entertainment. And so you would find things like The Void or Dreamscape were doing this, where, you would put on a headset with a group of friends and you would experience a kind of Star Wars adventure together. And, you were solving puzzle games and you were also moving physically through space. And simultaneously, you felt like you were, on a ship in outer space. So I do think that model will continue. I don't know how many of those businesses are still successful today. Like, I think that they are trying to find their cadence, and it's just a really new format. And to me, it just feels like we're still at the beginning of this art form of XR and immersive entertainment.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's only going to get better and better, obviously. And where do you see this heading, like in the next 5-10 years?
Yeah, good question. Where is it going? I think, again, like that ecosystem that I was talking about before, this like Internet of Things, AI, XR, I think those things are going to communicate so rapidly to each other that we'll be able to build a virtual world really quickly. So, it won't be perfect. Like right now, there's still a lot of steps involved. But for example, a colleague of mine, we were exploring doing some improv with him and his team. And he had a platform that we were experimenting with, a virtual world platform. And we could take our avatars in there and we could basically, through an AI tool, conjure up what we call a skybox. And so it's not three-dimensional. So it's not like we could interact with it. It might not be the proportions that we want. But if we were to say, name a location, Zeph, like if you would want to have your podcast in some crazy location, name a location now.
Okay. Mount Rushmore.
Mount Rushmore, yeah. Right. So we're like, okay, and Mount Rushmore, go. Yeah. We would basically be able to conjure it. So if we were doing a live performance or even a live TV series, for example, something with liveness, if we wanted to conjure it very quickly, that world would generate in like a minute. now things are even faster, right? It's like a matter of seconds. But that world might not exactly look like Mount Rushmore. Like it might get the faces totally wrong. It might get history wrong, but it probably will get a bunch of those things wrong. But if we keep experimenting and tweaking with it, we could get those things more accurate. And if we wanted to make them three-dimensional, that's where there's still a good amount of, like, I think where people have a lot of fears that people will be replaced. What we're doing on our team is we're making sure that people have AI tools to make their processes faster, but we're not replacing anyone in our departments with these tools. They're just able to use them. So there are still parts of a 3D modeling process that take a lot of time. And when we're using some of these tools, they're also generating a ton of things that we don't need. And so there's also like an element of us sifting through it. I think as these processes become faster and these technologies and this ecosystem talk to each other more, we're just going to find that we are able to have more seamless experiences and generate what we want faster. But my question for the future, and I think even for our audiences now, is what do we really want as humans? And I think we have to ask ourselves that more regularly. It's like when we're looking at what's getting generated on social media, information that's coming our way constantly in advertisements, is that what we want as humans?
I know. I think about that all the time, especially because I have children, and you start to think about that life is becoming more and more fragmented, and people's reality is becoming more and more curated in really specific ways. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you could have two people in the same exact room and they're totally doing different things. Like, one person is scrolling on TikTok and one person might be, like doing something completely different, and they're like completely checked out from one another. And so that's something I think about a lot, that life is becoming just more fragmented.
Definitely. Right. That's a really beautiful and sad way, I think, of putting it, right? Is like we could be in the same physical reality, but we're actually taking our attention into another reality that's disparate from where our other physical loved ones or people we're in company with are in physical space. Like, we're actually separating ourselves from each other. And in some cases, I think we've always done that as humans. Like, our sense of imagination could take us somewhere else, but we just have a lot more tools for distraction than take us there.
Yeah. And I think something like you're doing is it's so immersive that's its own other thing. Like, I don't look at like something like you're doing as that's like adding to that sense of, fragmentation. I think it's actually really unique and interesting, and it's something that's it just sounds fun, honestly, too. Like, it's something I really want to like experience and like check out. It sounds awesome.
Thank you. Well, I think that is the goal. We're trying to bring people into a shared time and space where they're actually very present.
Right. That's what I mean. Like, like it's so immersive that you can't have your attention anywhere else except for the thing that you're doing.
If you don't know what you're doing, if you're meant to like fly across the chasm in Futura City and like grab onto this grappling hook and jump across the space, if you don't pay attention, you could fall.
Right. They're not going to be taking off their headset off to look at their Instagram.
Right. Exactly. Like, you need to concentrate on what you're doing.
Yeah.
But at the same, fortunately, no one will hurt their physical body by doing that with their virtual selves. But yes, there is that. It is demanding a certain amount of presence and attention, and that is the goal, right? But I think that movies for many years have tried to do this too. And it's funny, when you were asking me to, look at some of my favorite scenes, and I think about some of these films, and I've chosen films from many years ago. And I think some of my other favorite films are so old. They've always done this incredible job of transporting us to another world. Like, the story is so detailed. It's so thoughtful. It's so beautiful. It takes us out of this reality and into something else where we go to live with our imagination for a while.
For sure. So how has it changed in the last 5 years?
How has the technology changed?
Yeah. Right. How has the technology changed?
It's funny. Some of my favorite headsets are like older ones, believe it or not.
Oh yeah.
Yes. I mean, certainly the what we call like a field of view, like the this kind of or what some listeners might be familiar with is like a viewfinder that you'd look through, right? Like our field of view in the headset has gotten bigger, and the pixel density is better. Like everything looks better, but comfort wise, headset wise, there's an older headset that I really loved called the Oculus Rift. And so I actually don't know that the headsets are technically more comfortable, in my opinion.
I see.
So I think we still have a ways to go. I mean, I use them because I think that they're incredible devices and they do transport us. And it's some of my favorite work to make these virtual worlds. But I also, the technology is not there. It's not lightweight. It's not, we're not able to move super flexibly yet. So there's definitely still room to grow in terms of the tech. The storytelling, in some ways, I actually think some storytellers that have entered this space are repeating some of the mistakes that were being made about a decade ago.
I see what you mean. Because there's a lot more newcomers doing this, and they're kind of making the mistakes that people did like years ago.
Exactly. So I don't know what's happening in the education. Is it a problem that the people are embracing new tools but forgetting storytelling elements?
Well, elaborate on it. Like what sort of mistakes are they making?
Yeah, I've been surprised. Like story development hasn't felt like it's as far as things were going.
Gotcha.
So I think that in some ways, like we're so mesmerized by the shiny carrot that we're chasing that. And so it's like, great, this project has, all this AI and it looks like marketing wise, like it can do all these cool things and it sounds really cool and it looks really great in photographs, but then you experience in it and there isn't a lot there. Like there isn't a lot of substance. There isn't a story. So that's been surprising, but I don't know that that's,
well, that's not new to this this medium, I should say, because people do that in filmmaking all the time, right? Like, I mean, think about how many action movies are so VFX heavy. They're like, hey, look at this VFX or look at this. And it's like, well, people don't care about that. They care about like, you know what I mean? Like, do they want to see this character on this journey? Like what the actors are doing, like that should supersede these other things,
Exactly. That's right. So I think that when we boil it down and we take that all of that new shiny tech away, sometimes the heartbeat isn't deep enough, I feel, for me. And I think that some of these, really capable young creators or new creators just need a little more time with story, or they need, a story coach to remind them, like, go a little deeper, like what does that character really want in that scene? Or why did you build this virtual world? What's the point?
Right.
So,
well, I think that's the filmmaker in you talking. Like really, like the storyteller is like, hey, like that's, this is a medium to really serve that versus, somebody getting hung up on just the technology first and then just shoehorn in the story there.
I think you're right. I think it does come down to, the filmmaker, the storyteller, and all of us is that why do we spend time with a series or a film or going to a virtual world if it isn't to be changed in some way, like to be able to go on a journey with a character? And we want to see, a character or characters challenge each other and change over the arc of something. And if that isn't happening in a piece of art, what else is there? So, and I like to look at beautiful things. Like, I'm excited to look at beautiful new technologies, but I won't spend a lot of time with them if I feel like after I've seen the beauty, if there isn't enough depth there. So that's something that I've just been encountering, in the last few years, kind of seeing again, like, okay, we've already done this a decade ago. Now the technology has come further. Processes for making these worlds or making 360 video is faster. So if the tools are faster and better, why are we repeating some of the same storytelling mistakes?
Yeah. It's a good point. So what's next on the horizon for you? Are you allowed to talk about what you're working on next?
Yeah, good question. I think I can in a general way. I mean, certainly we are just releasing this territory production that I've co-directed, this piece, this accessible dance experience in VR. So that's been really beautiful. So that's something that that I think, has made taken VR in a new direction to make the work more accessible, so that people that might want to experience something with closed captions have a way to do that. And those closed captions have been made in artistic. And so we've built a closed caption system that spatializes the closed captions and mirrors them to different characters in the piece and different types of sounds in the piece, and matches them in size and color to those things. So that's been really cool. So definitely we'll be, releasing more information about some of those systems that we've built. I have 3 new productions in development. The 2 that I think I could speak about a little bit, one has to do with water and the pollution of our ocean. And the other piece has to do with Cleopatra.
Cool. Nice.
Very different.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that, though. Very different, but I recently, last year, now it's 2 years ago, I produced a couple of fashion films in LA, and they were both for my friends Daniel Lear and Bayou Bennett, who run Dream Team directors, and the theme was sort of environmentalism, and there was one character who was playing, her name was Barit LaBelle, and she did an amazing job, and she was playing Cleopatra and Marie Antoinette. She was playing these different characters, and it was really interesting, like across like different times, That's so cool. What a great opportunity for her to get to inhabit those roles. Yeah. She did. And yeah, it was really, it turned out pretty well, I think.
Larger than life, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Brings us into a larger expression than our normal human expression.
Well, I think that, and I'm not the first person to say it, but I really do believe that like film and like these sort of experiences, like it's sort of an empathy machine, Mm-hmm. I think I'm sure there's been so many times where you've watched a film. I know it's happened countless times for me where, it's like somebody in a totally different background or situation, but if it's like a good story, you're really pulled into their world, and I think that's what's amazing about it.
Definitely. And I think especially with where XR can go, whether it's virtual reality and we're going into a different world, or it's augmented reality and we're augmenting on top of our world, I do think that it, can transform our human experience. It can take us on that journey and give us a new perspective.
Absolutely. Well said. So now we're going to segue into the second portion of the podcast, where I ask each guest about 2 of their favorite movie scenes from any film of all time. And I should give the disclaimer that, especially for filmmakers and, people in this field, it's a daunting question. So I always say,
it's really hard.
I always say it doesn't have to be your absolute most favorite. It's just like any scene that you like for any reason, really,
That opens it up. That takes the pressure off the stakes of like the best 2 scenes.
The absolute favorite, yeah. So we're going to discuss the Agnes Varda film, The Beaches of Agnes. And I'll let you sort of, describe, first of all, a little bit about the film and then the scene that resonates with you.
So I think it was in or around the time of Tom's class, actually, that I, came to know the work of Agnes Varda. I don't think I learned about her in college, unfortunately. She came to me later in life. And she had this incredible film that came out to movie theaters. I saw it on a big screen.
It came out in 2008.
Beaches of Agnes, Les Plages d'Agnès. And I was so moved by the way that she talked about her life. It's, a memory film. She's using a lot of, she's talking about relationships of her past, her her deceased husband at the time, Jacques Demy. She's talking about other really close friends, fellow filmmakers, her children. She's sort of going back in time. She walks backwards in the film, like she's narrating it. She's a character in the film. She's a character in many of her films. But Agnes, I was so taken by like her entire approach, how she treated it, how she treated herself as a subject in the piece, using herself. So she walks backwards in the film. She uses all of these really incredible, simple physical object devices. So she'll take mirrors, she'll set them up on the beach, she'll reflect people in her lives, she'll reflect herself, she'll reflect the ocean. Like we've all seen mirrors used in commercials and different moments, but the way that Agnes used them as a metaphor in her life. And then there's this silliness of her, close colleague, Chris Marker, close friend, Chris Marker, who she represents as a cat in the piece. And she could have done animation there, but she's using this like cardboard or wooden painted cutout that she drags around in the streets with her in Paris and does this, voice dub over of him. It's so clever.
And it looks almost like animation in the frame. It's drawn like that upon first glance, it looks like there's like a rotoscoped sort of cat or whatever. You know what I mean? You're like, oh wait, no, that's actually somebody like with a giant cutout or whatever. Right.
There's like some stagehand has moved that cardboard cutout along with her in the street so she can have this scene with it and share this kind of humor of this relationship that she had with Chris Marker over the years, another incredible filmmaker. And I was thinking about pulling a scene from one of his films, but his films are so fluid, it's hard to extract just a point in film. So yes, incredible film, incredible filmmaker. I actually had the opportunity to meet Agnes in Paris in her home.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. How did that come about?
I wrote her team many times and they let it happen.
Oh, you were persistent.
I was very persistent.
I like that. Love stories when somebody's persistent and then it happens.
They were like, all right, we're going to let this American girl come through. And I was working on my film Double Portrait at the time. And I shared it with Agnes and we talked about it and I played a clip for her and she just got it. She was very warm. I remember asking her some questions and she's like, everything about me is in my films. Like, that's who I am. What you see in the film is me. And I actually feel that was quite true. Like, she is very present in her films and she is the same. Was the same person.
How was she with you? Was she nice to you?
She was nice. Yes, she was. She was
so
nice.
It was a pleasant experience.
It was a good experience. Yes, I know they say, like, be careful of meeting your heroes in life. The whole journey, just, she had like an archive, almost like a little museum set up for Jacques Demy's work and for her work. And everything I felt like I was entering a film fantasy. So it was a very interesting experience, but maybe she's a very unique character and that was a unique time and place.
That's pretty cool. All right. So now we're going to move on to the second film, which is the 2001 film Amelie.
Very different film.
I'd never seen it before until I'd never watched it before until watching it to discuss this with you. Although, again, this is one of my favorite parts of the podcast is like it forces me to watch films that I might not normally watch. And it's not that I wouldn't watch it. It's just one of those things where, certain things slip through the cracks. Like you can't watch everything, and then also sometimes you have an impression of what something is and then it's not that. That's one of those experiences with this film. It's like, oh, I thought that was going to be a different kind of movie. And it was way better than the film that I was picturing it was going to be, So it was I'm glad that you put me onto this film. I really, really, I loved it. Actually, it was great.
It's so interesting. Very different filmmaker, Jean-Pierre Jeunet, another French filmmaker, but very different type of film. And
are you a bit of a Francophile?
I am. I did. Yes, I studied French growing up, and I studied in Paris at the Sorbonne for some time, and I had a really wonderful experience there. So yes, I think I am very much in love with French films. And so, but but particularly these scenes, and maybe it is about the way that the French filmmakers can be so imaginative and playful. There's something so different. I think the scene that I picked from Amélie is at like a midpoint, a little bit further than a midpoint of the film, and it's
first, this is going to be a tough one to sort of give a synopsis. Yeah, but try to give a synopsis of the film if you could, for people that might not be familiar.
Yes. Okay. So
it's about a unique young woman, for sure.
Young woman who is extremely observant, very imaginative, had a kind of quiet, almost isolated upbringing, not a lot of love in her life. And so she is observing others. She starts to do these like acts of kindness in the film. And she also loves to play games. Like she's very, I think she's just a very imaginative person.
One thing I love, by the way, on that topic is it really captured something sort of unique of how she led to her acts of kindness. That it was like, it showed, when Princess Diana died, and then there's this narration going on. And it's like, it forever changed her life. And you think it's going to forever change her life because she loved Princess Diana, or she was obsessed with like the British monarchy or something. But it wasn't that. It was because she was sort of startled, dropped something in her bathroom that rolled and hit like a tile that uncovered this hidden section in a wall where you think this like mouse is going to pop up or something like that.
Right. Like enter the animation sequence. Nope,
that's the kind of film that I thought it was going to be. I thought she was going to have like a pet mouse, and like it was like one of those kind of like films or something like that. But it wasn't. She like put her hand back there and she discovered this like sort of time capsule, like something that a child put like a box of like little accoutrements like 40 years earlier, and she made it her mission to go seek out, like now would be someone in their 50s, like who put this box there, and she did this whole sort of mission to leave the box there. She said to herself, if this person finds this thing and is happy that they found this thing, I'm going to start doing nice things for people. And I just love how the film really explores that, like this random sort of series of events could lead to, just like profound things in our lives. And real life is like that. If you really like look back in like your like own life, I'm sure like you're like, oh wow, like I would have never expected me doing this. Like you were talking about like the Tribeca thing, like you're like, oh, like me putting on this virtual headset in Tribeca like led to you being an immersive filmmaker. Like, you know what I mean? That wasn't your plan, I'm sure, like when you attended Tribeca, but that's how it happened.
Right. I mean, I was making films and stories, and if I trace back, because I think that there are signs of our gifts when we're young, but it takes time for us to discover them, because I think we get so distracted by life and other things in our way that kind of get in our way that take us further from them. And I think some people are good at finding them early on and staying close to them, but for at least in my life and maybe others, I think we can get separated from them. And I think if I look back to when I was a child, I was always building worlds. So, you don't get to go to college. Maybe now you can, but you didn't when I went to college to like become a world builder. That wasn't a career that I could find and train in. And so it took, studying theater, studying film, making things, trial and error of making things in order to learn. Like what I'm really good at is creating worlds, making these virtual worlds that I can bring people into, making these hybrid physical and virtual and augmented worlds that cross between realities. Like those are some of my special gifts. And I'm, just uncovering that in my life. And it does take, the fact that I finally put a headset on and did a piece that brought me into a world of, interacting with two soldiers. I think if I'd really sat down and I thought I was going to be moving my body between soldiers and an experience about war, I might not have opted for that piece, but I'm so glad that I did it. It was so meaningful. And it was all of the elements of storytelling and interaction that I wanted to see in a piece that I'd been looking for. And then I just knew like, this is possible. I had no
so
idea
cool.
it was possible.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I guess tell us a little bit about the scene that really resonated with you and Amelie.
I think the first scene where I just learned so much about camera movement. So the scene takes place, Amelie has left all these clues and she's left all these arrows to guide this young man that she's curious about, to guide him towards an album, essentially. But we don't know what she exactly, how she's going to guide him. Like, we're also on the adventure of it. And so we're following the clues just as he is in the scene. And so there's these arrows. And what's so amazing about that scene, so it's up in Montmartre, which is like at the top of Paris. Like, if you're looking at the map of Paris, it's like it's a famous cathedral, and it's all these beautiful white domes. It sits on top of a hill and it kind of looks down over Paris. And so he is at the base of the cathedral and he follows these arrows. And at the bottom of the scene, at the bottom of that cathedral, at the base where he starts his journey before he goes up, is this carousel, and it's spinning. And that's a key point because everything that starts to happen takes him in these circles. So he starts to run up in like a circular pattern around up the steps towards the cathedral. And the camera movement is taking us in these like sweeping circular shots all the way through as he, my interpretation of the scene, without reading any film criticism on it in a long time. Maybe I read this earlier in life. But what stuck with me is that it's mirroring, him sort of getting swept up into this romance and this mystery with Amélie. And even her, while she's in control of it, I think she's even amazed at herself by what she's doing. She's like orchestrated this. He's following, he's out of breath. Like he's like running. He gets to the top. He's out of breath. He can't, he has to like catch himself. He learns he needs to go back down. He like swoops around, runs back down, answers a telephone. She's on the other end. I think, did I catch that in the right order? Where does the telephone moment happen?
It's a good question. I think, no,
there's a telephone moment.
Yeah.
She's on the other end. She's, asking this question. So he has this opportunity to hear her voice. He opens up this album. She's watching this moment. So she's in control of this moment where he's being led out of breath and out of control. And he gets his final little puzzle in here, which basically asks, would he like to meet her, with a question mark? And, but he can't catch her in time. Like, she's disappeared, but then she kind of winks back. She looks back at us, at the camera, like she's made it happen. She's pulled this together. But, as we get to watch the rest of the movie, like, she then gets swept up in these circles. Like, she starts to come off balance and gets swept into her own orchestration of love and romance. And it's really quite beautiful how a new pattern and spiral happens for her, leading her to a breaking point where she's then, reminded of her fragility and what she needs to do to open herself for love. That's my analysis.
That's a great analysis. And I was just, the actor that, I don't want to butcher her name.
Audrey Tautou.
Yeah, she was really good. I've seen her in other things. She's really good. And then
she's like very quiet and she's just she's got such an expressive face, expressive eyes.
Yes, she does.
Really,
yeah. It was outstanding casting. Yeah.
Definitely.
And Matthau Kosovitz plays the guy, and he's actually the director of La Haine.
Wow.
Did you know that? No, he directed La Haine before that.
He did before.
Yeah, so it was in 95 that he directed La Haine. Have you ever seen that?
I have not, but I've heard of it.
You have to see it. That's a must watch. I was watching that a couple of weeks ago, actually. Funny enough.
Very cool.
Yeah. Because I was like sort of referencing it with a cinematographer that I know for something, and that's one of his favorite films, or that's his favorite film of all time. So I was like, let me give this a rewatch, and it was definitely worth it. One thing that kind of hit me like a ton of bricks though on Amelie was if you watch especially the opening of the film, you're like, oh my God, this feels like a Wes Anderson film.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I had just watched the Royal Tenenbaums the other night for the first time in a very long time. And I'm like, oh my God, like this completely, and it's not like they were ripping off Wes Anderson because it was coming out at the same time as the Royal Tenenbaums. Like literally it came out in the same year, and it was like before Wes Anderson really became kind of known for that kind of thing. Like that was like really the film, because he had done Rushmore before that and Bottle Rocket, but like the Royal Tenenbaums is when he really sort of like relished in that kind of style, like that quirky sort of style, you know?
Yes, it's very quirky. It says a lot about a character so quickly. Like you get to know the characters, and you know, by like setting them up in these situations, like we understand their past very quickly.
But especially because it was like fresh on my mind that I literally watched the Royal Tenenbaums the other night, and then watching this, it's like such a similar, like there's voiceover, there's like these like shots with perfect composition that are super stylistic, and some of them are on a zoom in, you know, and like these quirky sort of like the humor, and you know, it was just like really striking to me that how similar it was.
Definitely. And they're both using color. Both filmmakers use color in these like super saturated ways. I mean, Amelie is very strong colors in that film, like green and red are such, you know, striking colors that are part of her life in that world. But, you know, Wes is obviously using like some strong pastels in a lot of films. Like they're really saturating their films with color.
Definitely. Anyway, that's just something that I immediately noticed that I thought was really interesting. And I know Wes Anderson, is really like obsessed with French films, so I'm sure they had a lot of the same root influences there on their work.
Yeah, it's a good question. I know, right? Have they ever met? We'll have to scour the internet to see.
I know, yeah, maybe, but you know, it's probably. I just have a feeling that it was probably their influences were probably really similar. Like the sensibilities were probably really similar. More so than they were trying to rip each other off or anything like that. Definitely.
Well, I mean, you know, there's both great filmmakers. They've gone in to do some incredible things. And so definitely, I think that, you know, we're just lucky that we get these cool worlds to get to dip our toe into.
Absolutely. Well, Kiira, I really appreciate you being on the podcast. Where could people follow along with you?
They can go to doubleeye.co. That's my studio site. They can go to kiirabenz.com and follow on Instagram at my name, Kiira Benz, and follow the journey, and hopefully join us in a virtual world if they would like to explore in that realm or learn about virtual cinematography and virtual production.
Nice. Thank you, Kiira, for being on the podcast.
Thank you, Zeph, for having me. Thanks for introducing me to your great audience.
My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Film Situation podcast, hosted by Zeph Kota. Original music by Yuri Rybak.